And the not so magic machine tells me that I'm live. And I trust the magic machine, though I just identified it as not so magic, that I am indeed live. Here we are on the erstwhile TTRPG channel, Blueberry Wolf Bridge, No Intro RPG, simulcasting across the nations. In theory, all it takes to make this an international simulcast is people tuning in. Theoretically, I could be bigger than Elvis or Kiss. Theoretically, DC20 could be the next D&D killer. As has been pointed out, to be the next D&D killer, you would need to have an original D&D killer. D&D has never been killed. And why would anyone want anything else to be killed? How old are we? Is it not enough for our game of choice to be played? Can DC20, can Pathfinder, can GURPS, can Call of Cthulhu, can Exalted not stand on its own merits? Why must something come and kill D&D? And what does it mean to kill D&D? Would it mean to be the biggest TTRPG game in the land? What is this desire? The title of today's video is DC20 and the Search for a D&D Killer is a manifestation of TTRPG World's death drive. Maybe I'm being a little bit heady. Such is my nature. I call him Mario because it's easier than calling him just letters and numbers, over on Twitch. Please don't talk about steak in the chat and derail the stream. I would like to take this moment to point out that this individual is speaking as the only person in the stream. How do you derail something that started off the tracks? How do you derail someone talking about steak when he'd settle for anything, including a leftover Scooby snack? Hosannas and praise I say unto thee for bringing first in the live chat, gold medal unto thee. Reference. DSP's latest meltdown was because people were talking about steak instead of about his game. I'm not up to date on the latest DSP meltdown, but I appreciate you bringing up to speed. And there we go. Clarity and context for those who needed to be in the know. And that includes you now, too. What do I mean by death drive? Let me suggest that this need that people have to not be able to simply enjoy their tabletop game of choice, qua their tabletop game of choice, and their ability to not be able to just simply engage with game product A and game product B individually, or discuss these games on their own merits, but to have discussions about these games invariably become mixed in and mired in endless discussions about side issues, including the companies, WotC, and the endless struggles and travails and problems and made-up problems, I would say often, about the companies, whether it's some sort of, political or social war about go woke or go broke, or some sort of culture or class war that's being allegedly waged against the original community of players and some sort of corporatist commie game to make the game more palatable for, pink haired albino lesbians or whatever, or whether it's some sort of argument that the people in charge of these companies don't understand the players, specifically an argument about Wizards of the Coast. Or whether it's, some sort of, you know other argument about, this game is, a bad game or terrible, or, not the best, and this game is superior or whatever. Why does things always get mixed up in these side issues? And why does there always have to be this search for, like, why does this a new game? Why does it always have to be not just we talk about the mechanics of a new game or a new system or what makes this game, but why does it always have to be posited in some sort of reference to what's it going to do in regards to Dungeons and Dragons? How is it possibly be the game that is the new game that finally wrests, social mind control against those bastards over at Wizards of the Coast, and changes things in some way, shape, or form? And how those conversations can happen in complete ignorance of the world as we've seen it be. It's not like people in this community are, I mean, a bar to end, there is a kind of a kind of present understood, bar to entry to tabletop role playing games of literacy, of, like, kind of basic literacy and some computational math ability to engage in the hobby at some sort of basic level of competence. So while it is probably the case that it might be a general rule amongst humans that people probably think of themselves as smarter than they actually are, and that might be writ large, as a cultural, situation or problem in the TTRPG community, people probably aren't, like, thick as a brick. Like, people are probably, not, mentally incapacitated, you know what I mean? And yet, oftentimes they seem capable of acting that way. And certainly what we know sociologically, looking at the numbers, that clearly, it's an aging demographic. Like, certainly there's, millennials, and there's, new younger people, there's like, there's certainly enough grognards here, enough people that are old and mature, but some of these people that are old and mature seem to be the ones that are capable of acting in complete ignorance of some just basic common sense computational, analysis of what's, going on. I can like it onto it, a terrorist, who dissatisfied with, a governmental system decides to want to take a nihilistic action of bringing the whole system down, versus a person that would say there's a problem with the current governmental system, so what we want to do is we want to change it. If you seek to change a system or to work with a system that currently already exists, you can achieve some change while not destroying. Whereas if the terrorist takes control and brings down the whole governmental system, you might be left with nothing. And to bring that analogy to the TTRPG space, if people want to play a different game because they don't find 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons to be satisfying, or if they think WotC are making foolish or bad decisions, well, then go play something else and do something else. Therefore, you would be helping to encourage another branch or another aspect of the hobby, because you're free to do that, and that activity would have WotC's actions would have absolutely no impact on you, because people playing 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons in no way, shape, or form affects, hurts, or injures your ability to play any other gaming system. It can only help it, right? Because if 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is successful and encourages companies, storefronts, retail establishments, gaming friendly local gaming stores to be successful, and then therefore stock more options, buy more product of different varieties, even just stock dice that is there for your ability to purchase, gaming supplements or products that might be of ancillary use to you, brings in more players that might then go and play a different system as well. To borrow a phrase from a political movement that I have no joy or love for, where we go when we go all. It would seem that success for Dungeons and Dragons and growth for Dungeons and Dragons inures to success for the rest of, and the livelihood of the rest of the TTRPG community as well. So why would you want anything to kill the biggest? It's an ecosystem. Why would you want anything to kill any aspect of the ecosystem? Because to take out any part of any viable ecosystem or biosphere could potentially wreak havoc on that biosphere, especially if that's something that you're seeking to take out sits at the titular head. You certainly wouldn't want to take that out unless you knew the thing that was taking it out was taking it out organically. And yet we see people who lick their lips and are chopping at the bit to do things, to want to hurt WotC, to want to see that the Dungeons and Dragons movies fail, to see that something, and just cheer it on. And I say, why? And I say, this is what this manifestation of this death drive is. I posit a theory that I'll put forward for your. We also say hello to Tim Frey in the live chat. We say hello to Golden Coin 100, a silver medal onto Golden Coin 100. Oh, actually, a gold coin onto Golden Coin 100 for participation on YouTube, a silver medal onto Tim Frey for participation on YouTube. The gold went to Mario on Twitch. There you go. Covering all sorts of bases. So jump in the live chat if you so desire to have your name shout out with an imaginary Olympic metaphor medal. So this notion of a death drive is that when some entity, when some being, when some conscious actor knows or feels or senses that the end is near, that it's all over, that they are going to die or feel that they should die, that they're a marked individual, that contrary to the survival instincts that oftentimes are supposed to be operating in a successful, viable, living entity, to seek shelter, to seek water, to drive and to want to work to thrive. What can sometimes happen, either in an individual that has become deranged because of some sort of, mental sequela or some sort of disease, or because something is flipped and they know that either due to operative conditions within the self or operative conditions within society, some signal has occurred that they're no longer healthy and viable either for the community, or they're no longer healthy and viable, or they don't believe that they're healthy and viable for themselves. They start to move towards a desire to see it all unravel and to desire to hasten that demise. Mental health professionals talk about this, sociologists talk about this, and historians talk about this. So you can see sometimes in history where a society may be progressing or looking good, and then things start to go wrong. And then you can look at the external factors that were operating to see things go wrong. And then in light of those external factors, you see internal things start to go wrong, where people and societies start making things demonstrably worse for themselves. People turn on themselves, societies turn on themselves, and things start to decay from within. As if people start to give up. People that work in hospice care see this. that at certain points and at certain point in people's death journeys, hope can leave. And it can happen in different ways. There can be quiet resignations, there can be kind resignations, there can be easy resignations, and there can be rough resignations. We say hello to Catherine on YouTube, grabbing that bronze. Where things can go down in fratricide and people can turn on each other and turn on themselves. We say hello to Galaxy Fox Night Sky. Hello to they. I think we're out of medals to give away on YouTube, but I'll give you an honorable mention. Thank you for coming by the live chat. So if you're in the TTRPG space on YouTube, and remember, folks, there are people that play TTRPGs, there are people that play role-playing games that have no gosh darn business. They don't hang out on Twitter. They don't hang out on YouTube. They don't give a flying whatever. And none of this matters to them at all. I remember famously the guy that was a titular part and one of the leaders of this whole, what I characterize as a false flag op that was run on the TTRPG community, this so-called OGL crisis that I will put forward here again, and if not trying to start another thing, was an op. The so-called OGL crisis that was not a crisis, nothing happened. My theory, you can believe me if you're not, it was a direct operation by people, I allege, who had material benefit to gain by people turning away from WotC products and turning towards their competitors' products. And I'm not looking to get sued, so I'm not going to name names, but one of the people that was clearly the first person, the literally first person to break the story, Stephen Glicker over at Roll for Combat said at his own Dungeons & Dragons table, one of the players had no idea about the OGL crisis. That's his own table. And he was a linchpin operative in making that whole OGL crisis, so-called OGL crisis, blow up. And at the end of the day, here we are a year and a half, 2 years later, and nothing has happened. But we do know that Pazio, the people behind Pathfinder, if you look at the life, and I just looked at OGGM, did an upload today, and he's talking about Pathfinder coming out with a new core rule book. And he did the timeline. If you look at the Pathfinder timeline, Pathfinder 2 came out in 2019. Yeah, 10 years after Pathfinder 1. Okay, 10 years, you come out with a new edition. Then they come out with another edition, and it's exactly... It's the exact same story with Dungeons & Dragons 3.0, 3.5. 10 years between editions, okay, it kind of makes sense, right? 5 years between editions, 3 years between editions. And remember, they did that whole thing. WotC, you're so stinky pants. They screwed you guys on this OGL. Chuli's gone, man. You got to get behind Pathfinder, man. Pathfinder and Pazio, they're real players. They wouldn't do this to you. Yeah, we just sold out of Pathfinder, man. Yeah, because behind Paz, you're all switching to Pathfinder because you're cool dudes. And Chuli's gone. You all switched over to Pathfinder. Oh, by the way, thank you for buying all those Pathfinder books. We just sold out. Oh, by the way, we're just coming out with Pathfinder 2.5. It's not a new edition. Don't worry about it. Like Glicker didn't know that they were coming out with 2.5. His boy wrote the fucking book, homies. They do it to you right to your face. And does anyone say, yo, there's Pazio doing exactly what WotC do? No one says shit because people are brainwashed. Everyone's just, you got to realize that everybody up in your face, up on YouTube, if they're in the business of selling you something, they're in the business of selling you something. Dude, you want to talk about Gonerman, who's giving you, who has got his own gig and then just gives away basic fantasy? You're talking about a guy who's basically giving away basic fantasy. You're talking about a guy who's talking about Fugazi, like the band Fugazi. $5 shows, $8 CDs, whatever the cassettes cost. You know what I mean? People put their money where their mouth is. The people that are like traveling the world and living punk rock lifestyles and giving shit away. And people that are making money and are selling you stuff. And people who have made investiture into becoming YouTubers have made investiture into becoming YouTubers. And if part of their supplementary income that they're relying upon is tied into YouTube, you can no longer trust them as objective people giving you straight up information, because whether it's just they're getting paid in ego or whether they're getting paid in dollars, they're now involved in the YouTube game. A person starts off like a kid. I want to be a writer. I want to be an artist. I want to be a musician. I want to be a programmer. And I want my games to be about this. And I want my books to be about this. And I want my art to be about this. And then you hit the real world. And it's like, oh, you want to make a movie, kid? Well, the movie's got to sell. Or you want to make a book, kid? Well, you want to get signed? You want to do this? You got to play the game. It's like, you want to be on YouTube? Oh, I want to be on YouTube and I want to make videos about this, because this is what I'm interested in. Okay. But then if you start to want to make it on YouTube, or you get a viral video and you want to stay there, and then like Dungeon Coach or like, Professor DM, you start talking about avoiding the YouTube death spiral and playing the algorithm and understanding the algorithm and studying the algorithm, and you start making decisions in regards to the algorithm, well, then you're not making videos about crafting and independent this. You're working YouTube, and I'm not here to tell you that means you're like the world's biggest piece of crap and you need to go, suck a lemon. You know what I mean? And you're done. And you know what I mean? You've been, found guilty by the Maoist revolution, and go get you. You know what I mean? I'm just saying you're a human being, but I'm saying that that's what it's about. And you need to know, and people need to know and understand that everything that comes out of your mouth now is like wrapped up in that. It's wrapped up and part of that decision process. It's no longer just about what was this game? How did this game play on the tabletop? What's it about? The minute you start taking meetings with Hank and Frankenfooter or whatever, and his girl, whatever about Shadow Dark, and they're wrapping you up in the club and they're buying you drinks and this whatever, and you start making these highfalutin statements about whatever, people need to know that you're part of a promotional push to make something happen. And people are making irrational statements, like I saw, God bless him, I saw RPG Pundit, and I saw, was it Ben over at Questing Beast, do these like both from completely opposite angles, make these just bizarre analysis over Kickstarter numbers, indicating to them that the OSR is growing. I'm not saying the OSR is growing or shrinking or whatever, but they were just making these bizarre extrapolations over these Kickstarter numbers that had like, it was like, listening to, no offense, dude, I'm like left of center, I'm left of Bernie Sanders, but I'm not going to take economic advice from a communist, right? Because economic advice has to do with capitalism, and a communist is just, I'm not going to take economic advice from, libertarians into Bitcoin either. I'm going to listen to, Warren Buffett. I'm going to listen to someone who's like just a regular capitalist. I'm not going to listen to someone who's just like abstracted on some sort of political, or just doesn't understand the fact that Kickstarter is an abstraction. It's a platform designed to get money to people whose ideas cannot survive in the corporate industrial space as it currently exists without alternative forms of funding. And people are looking at these numbers acting like that this means something about success for this industry or success for aspects of this industry in regards to Hasbro and WotC. It's like it's not literally apples and oranges, because literally apples and oranges is apples and oranges, which is our pieces of fruit, and we're talking about gaming products, but it's just irrelevant. Particular product getting $1 million on Kickstarter, like what is $1 million? To talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and to talk about viability for TTRPGs in a space of video games and mobile games and eyes, and trying to get and keep this hobby viable. in line of and in light of other media options and other entertainment options, and you're talking about $1 million Kickstarter, it indicates that people don't know what they're talking about. It indicates that people are excited about the notion of just the number $1 million. It's literally like Dr. Evil. And our demands are $1 million. $1 million? What is this? Right? Sam Gino has my honest opinion on current D&D. My honest opinion on current D&D is that it exists. It's a brand that is currently owned and operated by a company called, Wizards of the Coast, which is an operation attached to a larger corporate conglomerate, you're right, called Hasbro. And is it the best role playing game that ever was? No, but where we are in human history is the fact that the story of tabletop role playing games is a story that's defined by the story that actually is, right? Would have, should have, could have. What actually happened and what actually is the case. And the case actually is that the largest, most successful role playing game that ever has been Dungeons and Dragons. And I would posit that there's always been just Dungeons and Dragons, and around the world that Dungeons and Dragons has kind of allowed to come into existence, other pocket dimensions of other gaming cultures have flourished and existed. And in that regard, one shouldn't be hoping or praying for Dungeons and Dragons that is still that thing, for better or for worse, to be quote unquote killed. And when you see people wanting that and speaking in that language, it indicates a kind of unaliving. I don't want to get in trouble for using words I'm not supposed to. It indicates this kind of death drive. It indicates a desire to have the whole thing blow up. It indicates a kind of a death drive, a desire to see if I can't be happy, if we can't be successful, we don't want anyone to be successful. But I think it also indicates a kind of, when those things happen, it might be part of the collective unconscious. It might be part of us as a TTRPG community knowing and understanding that we might be going through a retraction. And I might be going on to a next stage. First of all, people should need to understand, like, I talk, what might be interpreted as crap about, different people in TTRPG land, or different aspects of TTRPG, or talk about retraction in the TTRPG space. I don't think anything is going to go to zero. I don't think anything is going to, die. I don't think people are going to stop. People still play Mancala, right? People still play, chess. People play games that are thousands of years old. I don't think people are going to stop playing tabletop role-playing games. But I think that people need to know and acknowledge and understand that aspects of TTRPGs are tied to nostalgic loops and nostalgic memories about cultural epochs in human history. And as we move through different periods of reminiscence and recollection about different times in human history, that we're going to see retractions and we're going to see things fall away. I don't think there are people that seem to be acting like we're going to be once we get WotC out of the room, once we get Dungeons and Dragons out of the way, there's going to be some sort of like grand manifest miracle that's going to happen, and we're going to see some sort of amazing spike or trend when more and more people, or the kids, put down the video games and start playing role-playing games again, tabletop role-playing games again. And I don't think that that's going to happen. And so I think that, look, I think that looking around, and I might be jumping around a bit, and I apologize if I'm doing that. I think, and comments from the live chat sometimes do this, sometimes will move me kind of from one aspect of the conversation to another. I talk about nostalgia loops all the time. It does seem, finally, looking around at the culture around us, especially looking at kids, clothes, fashion, and trends around me, visually even, that we are finally leaving the 80s and going into the 90s. While there was tabletop role-playing in the 90s, for sure, it didn't have the cultural caveat, and it didn't have the cultural touchstone aspect that it did in the 80s. Same thing with video games. The Sony PlayStation released in 1995 was cutting edge, and it was a revolution in video game technology. And when we think of video games in the 90s, we think of PlayStation and the polygon graphics and stuff. But when we think of the 90s, we don't tend to think of video games. And we don't tend to think of role-playing games. I mean, if we were a gamer in the 90s, we might be like, oh man, like individually, like I know I've got buddies, dude, I'm like 48. So I remember like 95. I remember 95. You know what I mean? I remember like 95 was a goth year. Like that was like the height of me in goth. So I remember like going to the Limelight. I remember going to the Batcave. I remember playing in bands. I remember, doing drugs. I remember chicks. I remember Vampire the Masquerade as far as role-playing games was concerned, not so much because I was playing, but because the other geeks I was into, because they were all goth, they were like, that was what they were playing. But I remember a lot of LARPing and stuff. But it was, it was underground, and it definitely wasn't Dungeons and Dragons. Like in the 80s, Dungeons and Dragons had a cartoon. Do you know what I mean? It was Dungeons and Dragons. They had action figures. It was Dungeons and Dragons, right? And video games like Pac-Man, the arcades and stuff. Like there were video games, and there were still gaming and stuff, but it wasn't what you think of when you think of the 90s. When you think of the 90s, if I say 90s, you'd be like grunge, flannel, Bill Clinton. You know what I mean? You're going to think of different things, but the first thing off your head is not going to be video games, Pac-Man, Dungeons and Dragons, right? That might be part of your personal story, but it's not something that you're going to throw up and associate with the 90s. So if we're going from the 80s to the 90s, which is what I think that we're doing, I think we need to be prepared that we might, as a TTRPG community, the hype and the height of Critical Role and all that shit, and everyone's playing D&D and Stranger Things and all that stuff, all of that 80s nostalgia, boo, that I think brought in a lot of people and brought in a lot of energy. I think people are gonna have to accept that, and I think people are accepting. I think that's part of this death drive that I'm talking about. I think people are kind of like, it's like, the red pill and blue pill, and there's a black pill analogy. It's like giving up, a kind of a nihilistic take of, and some people might be in denial. Everything's great. Everything's fantastic. The OSR is bigger than ever. Look at these numbers. Here we go. Here's Sam again. Interesting. So you think we're in a moment of great change? I do think. I don't know if I'd say we're in a moment of great change. I think that we're always in a moment of change and transition. Do you know what I mean? But I definitely think that we need to know and understand that I definitely think that we're in a moment of change and transition. And I definitely think that there is definitely finally a movement out of 80s nostalgia, finally into the 90s. And that as part of that, we're going to see this TTRPG thing, kind of really kind of go underground. I think that this, especially with, Wizards of the Coast indicating that they so want to go digital. I think also this death drive, this desire for this D&D killer, it's like, sometimes you'll see this in relationships. The guy knows that the girl who might be out of his league is going to break up with him. Or, if you don't let, it could be, you can alter the scenario. Partner A, partner B knows partner B is going to leave, or a person, if you see this, basically the dude knows that he's going to get fired, right? The guy or the gal on the job, Slack machine, knows that you're born in 95. There's a point in your life where you realize, Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a point in your life where people can be like, I can't believe you're messing with someone half your age. You'd be like, well, to be fair, the person half my age was 29. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Not trying to put, it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Holy crap. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Christ Almighty. Everywhere I worked, you know what I mean? All my day jobs that I had as a kid, they've all been torn down. You literally cannot go. I feel, no, exactly. When the people that are like, were born when you were kicking it, right? I was kicking it when you were born, right? I may have come to in the hospital where you fell out of your mother's crotch, right? And you feel old. Do you know what I'm saying? Christ Almighty, are we going through a great change? Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what I mean? Holy crap. You know what I mean? And we also say Kalendal is here. Kalendal, I do see you, baby. I see you, Kalendal. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? Talk about the current state of current D&D. Let me say, Sam, you were born 3 years after second edition. FYI, in case you're curious. Anywho, Genocide still on D&D 3.0. Okay, 3.5. Okay, Pathfinder first edition. Yeah, absolutely. Look. Here we go. Pet Genocide. That's a casual D&D. I could care less about watching or whoever. I just want to have fun playing a game I enjoyed in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. That's the other thing. Why do people need to search for a D&D killer, right? Why does DC20 need to be posited as a D&D killer? And first of all, it's ludicrous. Nothing has ever come close to killing D&D. If you look at all the statistics and all that, first of all, Pathfinder, at the time that it ever even, when the notion and the moment that they point to say Pathfinder 1 outsold D&D, it was for a momentary heartbeat of 1/4, and it wasn't true. Pathfinder 1 never outsold D&D in any true sense of the word. They have to look for one period of time. It's like saying that, that time that Will Chamberlain was in a coma, right? You know what I mean? And I accidentally got lucky because, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Someone let me hit it twice that I beat his number. It's just ridiculous. It's just not true. You can look at any numbers whatsoever. You can play fuzzy math. There's fuzzy math, and then there's fuzzy math through like a kaleidoscope. It never happened. And by the way, at the time that Pathfinder outsold D&D, quote unquote, Pathfinder 1.0 is D&D 3.5. It says it on the fucking thing. You can put as many Blumenthal house rules in as you want to. It's 3.5 D&D. It is. Which means at the time that D&D was outsold by anything, it was outsold by D&D. Look at the numbers on any of the virtual tabletops. Everyone is playing D&D, and they've always played D&D. And every once in a while, people play another thing. And if you want to talk about Japan, where people are playing majority of something else, something else, something else, they're still playing a ton of fifth edition D&D. They are. And again, what does anyone who wants to play anything other than D&D, why do you have to talk about people playing D&D? Why can't you just play what you want to play? Why do you have to talk in opposition to the biggest thing in the room? Don't you have anything else going on? No, you don't. Is desire through the creation of a controversy with the biggest person in the room and the biggest community in the room to create some sort of frisson of alternative energy that's going to hopefully, I believe, in people's minds, hopefully coalesce into an alternative culture that they can glom some sort of identity from or whatever. And alternative to that, they're just going to burn everything down. And it's foolish and it's fallacious. People are talking about, oh, maybe DC20 will get a portion of, or maybe they'll be the next Pazio. And what does that mean? Pazio is a virtual company. What is that? What do I mean by that? I don't think they have actual sitting offices. They just deal with for hire people. I don't think they've got main corporate offices. That should indicate to you the level of kind of what we're dealing with here in this space. And that's not a diss. That's not saying they don't have a main corporate office, therefore they're a joke. And it's not me saying that $1 million on Kickstarter means that you suck. It means that you should put that in context to say that that is a success story on Kickstarter. But a success on Kickstarter does not equal competition with a company like WotC or Hasbro. And in no way, shape, or form indicates a corporate knowledge basis or backstory or structure that indicates that you're set up or ready to compete with Hasbro or WotC. Or that that's in the cards for anybody. And the things that I'm saying, it doesn't take rocket science to come to those conclusions. So why are so many people overshooting those basic conclusions and getting to this alternative world of bizarro statements? And it's either they're doing it for their own financial agenda to keep this bullshit story of keeping their YouTube channels going, or their own hobby industries of selling you books of crap that you don't even buy. You don't need to buy anything. There are so many TTRPG books that have been printed over the last 50 years. You get them first song and a dance, and it's just everything is +1, -1, numbers and statistics. Take whatever you want, leave the rest. You can, all of y'all, if you play games for any number of time, you can all home rule things in your head. You know, you can make up a system on the fly. To say nothing, the millions of games that are pay what you want, or pay $1. And this DC20 system, by Dungeon Coach's own rationale analysis, to my understanding, is just another variation on D&D 5.0, more or less. Just like Old Swords Reign. You know what I mean? There's 1,000 ways to tweak. But again, 5th edition is, 3.0, 3.5. We've been dealing with D20 rolls, add modifiers, try and hit a difficulty number for how long. Oh, but this one's so much more streamlined. Oh, okay. And that's going to kill it? That's what's going to kill Dungeons and Dragons? A streamlined, the action economy. No, this, you understand, this is not, I thought that the Pathfinder 2.0 3 action economy was the bee's knees. But now that I see DC20's 4 action economy, oh my God. Now I'm like, Dungeon Coach, take me away. Get out of here. Get the hell out of here. That's what's going to do it. Now all you got to do is get all these people to move away from what? It was Daggerheart, something from the Valiant, Black Flag, whatever. Then it was Shadow Dark, whatever. And all these things, it's all just different games. And it's all the same game. It's all the same game. More or less. But what I keep on want to come back to is why this need to always want to kill Dungeons and Dragons and get WotC and be a D&D killer. This is a hype machine, but it's a hype machine towards killing the thing, killing Papa. And it's all we gotta kill Papa. We gotta kill the house that's in the name of Gary Gygax. In the name of Gary Gygax, we gotta do this, and it's all. Wait, these are games. Why do you gotta kill Monopoly because you love Sorry? Why do you gotta kick Sorry's ass because you're really into Trouble? Right? Why does like Final Fantasy VII have to die? Because you're all about Trials of Mana. It makes no sense. But to some people, it makes all the sense in the world. And when people are doing things, when human beings, when these amazing evolved apes that have broken the atmosphere of the planet and have split the atom, start doing these ridiculous things. Like saying things like what's going to be the next D&D killer, even though there's never been a prior D&D killer. When they start saying that to other evolved apes and other evolved apes who are intelligent enough to know that that's a ridiculous statement, start listening to those ridiculous statements like they make sense. You have to say to yourself, why are people saying ridiculous things and why are people listening to ridiculous things? Right? Do you believe that the people that were in Nazi Germany prior to the ascent of Adolf Hitler were constitutionally evil people? Somehow different? Fundamentally, morally and ethically than the people in the United States or England or here or somewhere else in the world? Or do you think that circumstances and something happened that created some sort of nexus of insanity and confusion? And if it sounds highfalutin, I'm not saying that we're dealing with that sort of, we're not dealing with a situation that's going to turn that, we're not dealing with countries, we're not dealing with, world history here. We're just dealing with this insanity. This is the insanity that we're dealing with. But the insanity that we're dealing with is the insanity that we're dealing with. There's nothing stopping for people from saying, I'm into DC20 and here's why I think DC20 is great. And here's the reason that DC20 is awesome. Oh, and by the way, it did this number on Kickstarter and isn't that great? No, they're leading with did this number on DC20, did this number, and that's why this means, and come up with some crazy extrapolation about what that number means, which means nothing, and somehow it being a D&D killer. Like all the people that are watching YouTube or all the people that play D&D and they're all going to switch and start playing D&D. When the same people that are telling them to switch to DC20 just a couple of months ago were telling them to switch to Pathfinder or DCC or telling them to switch to that system. This is we just got through telling them to switch to Shadow Dark. One shots are incredibly easy for players to participate in because the player needs to be told, okay, here's what you're going to do, here's the basic rules, and here's the tests that you're going to run, and blah blah blah, and here are the skills that you can do, and here's player creation. I will walk you through. So all these different systems, you know what I mean? You're wanting people to. And the dirty little secret is all these little things are just going to be books that are going to be bought that for a lot of them are just not going to get played. Right? That is what it is. Anyway, that's kind of my spiel. That was it. It's just this manifestation of this death drive that people either knowing or understanding that this thing might be coming to an end. So let's all just act like we wanted it to come to an end by either having someone to blame, by blaming Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons, even though people are actively cheering against it, or like I said, pretending like something's going to come along or something's capable of coming along and replacing Dungeons and Dragons. It's all just hype. And it's the same players involved all the time. You see the Professor DM video hyping dungeon DC20. And who was the sponsor of that video? It was DC20. And who had run them through and who had taught them how to play DC20? It was Dungeon Coach, who, by their own admission, are friendly with each other. Just like how Professor DM hyped the shit out of Shadow Dark after telling an extensive story about how Kelsey Dion and Frank, who, Rune Master, he's a great artist, you know what I mean? I like the guy, he seems like a rock and roll animal. Whatever, dude, you know what I mean? His name is, Viking as fuck or whatever. His art's cool. Index RPG guy, whatever, like, you know what I mean? Like, they wined and dined that super nerd, God bless them. They totally schnoozed them. Remember, like I talk about it all the time. Professor DM's endorsement of Shadow Dark was like remember that there was that old skit on Saturday Night Live about the people that got hypnotized. The opening act for Cats was a hypnotist, and they all came out. They were like, "I loved Cats. I'm gonna go see it again and again." Professor DM came out with like his review of Shadow Dark was like, "It's the most exciting thing. It's a thrill-a-minute ride. You'll be up, you'll be down, you'll be one." It was like this is describing like a roller coaster, but it's a tabletop. When you just get laid, like what did they do? Like did they give you like a bump? Did they give you like your first taste of Molly? Like what did they do? Honestly, he was over the moon. And like I'm not saying that Shadow Dark sucks. I read the quick start rules. Guess what? It's a tabletop game. I'm like no offense. I'm not saying it like maybe I'm jaded, you know what I mean? But it's like it didn't like I don't know, like maybe you gotta do like the magical incantation, something happens. Killendall, video games picked up late 90s. Killendall, I love you. You're probably generationally, I'm not, like I said, they picked up, but they're not defined I'll give you another perfect example, Kalendal. There was a renaissance of Western movies, okay, in the 90s as well. Young Buns, known but not some as Young Guns. You had, I think it was there was a whole bunch of them. There was one with Sharon Stone. There was a whole bunch of westerns, right, that came out. Wyatt Earp, the whole bunch of westerns, whatever. Um, and people were talking about the resurgence of westerns. Where I talk about these nostalgia loops. People come back into cycles, but the westerns of the '90s, while it's remembered as a resurgence. Okay, this also happened with film noir movies in the '80s. During the '80s, there was a resurgence of interest in film noir and what they called neo noir movies. Well, there was a resurgence, and it's a definable resurgence, and it's a definable era in cinema, right? The resurgence of these westerns, the Western revival, like the OSR. There's a revival, okay, but it's not the heyday when westerns were westerns, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly, whatever. The John Wayne, Roy Rogers. When westerns were westerns, and everybody was going when those things, people could talk about the numbers, if you control for inflation, that you can't compare them. What the cultural impact was at point A and the cultural impact was at point B, right? You can we can people can have disagreements with it. I posit that that you can't compare them, right? The revival is never as big as the thing. When people will often say, "Oh, well, it turns out that." Some people will say, "Actually, there's more people playing Dungeons and Dragons today than there was during the '80s." And I've looked at some of those numbers, and first of all, some of those numbers are predicated and based on numbers that are actually coming out of WotC that I'm dubious about. Okay, I actually don't believe, but a lot of that comes down to. I also think the things that people are not taking into consideration is worldwide reporting, aggregate numbers that weren't available at certain points, reporting numbers that weren't available, technically at certain other points in time. Also, the world population. I believe we've gone over, and we're over 8 billion people on planet Earth now. If you go back to 1984, there wasn't 8 billion people on planet Earth. To the degree that you trust the numbers, like the census data and the ability of our ability to assess how many people are on planet Earth. You know what I mean? Some of this comes down to, if you not only people don't do these, they do things oftentimes to correct for inflation, but they won't correct for body populace. They do the number analysis, but they won't do the number analysis for the number of people in the world. Which, when you were talking about the number of raw billions of people that are now on planet Earth that weren't here 40 years ago, I think you have to do. So I stand by my position that you don't. While there were video games in the '90s, and while you might look at it and say that there were more video game sales, you don't have the case where for the first time there was a new technology that we associate this birth of a new technology or birth of a new gaming thing like Dungeons and Dragons or role-playing games with a certain era, like you do the video games with the '80s. Like you would do, I don't think you associate video games in the '90s. Though obviously there were video games in the '90s. I suspect it's some of the fandom going aging out. Absolutely, there's definitely that too. Also, it's like I say, this is that people also need to take consideration this the cultural death drive is as people leave. What people might not be able to deal with is that I think we're also dealing with this with critical role. Um, that people don't take consideration. People talk in this community. They talk oftentimes. Some people, not other people. We're talking generalities. Um, I was frustrated because it seemed patently obvious to me. I'm a student of nostalgia loops, and so for me, looking at the rise of Matt Mercer and Critical Role, it seems, and 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, it seems patently obvious to me that you have 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons being released in 2014, which is on the nostalgia loop directly tied to the success of the Metzer, the Frank Metzer Red Box D&D in 1983, 1984. That's the heyday of Dungeons and Dragons. So 83 to 94, 94 to 2004, 2004 to 2014, that, with 84 to 90, 84 to 94, 94 to 2004, 2004 to 2014, that 30-year loop. That's it. That 30-year loop is a powerful loop. But now that we're getting onto the 40-year loop, that's double the 20. It's usually after 10 years that the 80s look back on the 70s and go, oh man, bell-bottom jeans, platform shoes, Kiss, right? The Kiss were the bee's knees in the 70s, but in the 80s, we got to take this makeup off. We got to be like try to be like Poison. We don't want to be like Kiss from the 70s. But by the 90s looked back on the 70s, 20 years, that's happy nostalgia time. Put the makeup back on. Nirvana's out there. We love Kiss because the 90s loves the 70s. The 2000s loves the 80s. 20 years, 30-year nostalgia loop, that's fine. But now we're getting 10 years is cliche. So now we're looking 10 years back on the dawn of Critical Role. So I don't say that Matt Mercer, which a lot of people like to act like Critical Role made Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. I say no. Frank Metzger's Dungeons and Dragons Red Box, Uni, the Dungeon Master, the cartoon and the action figures, all of that stuff 30 years ago to 2014 made Matt Mercer, made Critical Role, made Stranger Things, made 5th edition. All that stuff, Stranger Things is a nostalgia loop. There's nothing, everyone likes to act like Stranger Things and Rick and Morty did something for Dungeons and Dragons. No. Nostalgia, the 80s made Stranger Things. The Demogorgon from the 80s made Stranger Things. Stranger Things didn't do anything for D&D. D&D made Stranger Things. That's what I say, and anyone who disagrees with me is free to disagree with me. We can have a debate. Watch, they're supposed to come out with Stranger Things again. It's gonna fucking suck. And we're 10 years out from the dawn of Critical Role, and all the news on Critical Role and Daggerheart is they're having problems. Candela Obscura didn't do that great. I said the Candela Obscura should run on the Open D6 system, because if you go on nostalgia loops, it will be right on par, right on a loop for the Star Wars D6 system. That's what they should use. They didn't. They went with Blades in the Dark or some variation of Blades in the Dark, and Candela Obscura came and went. And now it's looking like Daggerheart's not doing that great, even though that Daggerheart was supposed to be a D&D killer. Everything they put up as a D&D killer is like the nothing, right? We can put on the wall all the things that are supposed to have been D&D killers. Call of Cthulhu hasn't managed to be a D&D killer, except in Japan. They keep on trying to tell us. Here we go. Completely off topic. I found you ages ago talking about J. Scott Garrett. He recently blocked me. You managed to get blocked by J. Scott Garrett? I've never been blocked by J. Scott Garrett. He gave me a cutting remark. I've been on Cyberpunk 2020 for almost 2 years now. Skill-based games are more my style compared to class-based. There you go. Killendall, games are in a bad state now. They are. I think everyone's trying to find their place, and it's I think it's got a lot of different moving pieces. I think late market capitalism has got a part to play. I think the loot boxes and the pay to play systems and the never finished games and the always updatable games and the forever online games has been a terrible system for it. Right on it. Kill Endel, money grabbing, no innovation, no balance. I agree with you. Here we have Tim Frey. Pazio and Pathfinder are just shiny accessories. D&D still had the brand mystique and always will, even if they destroy themselves. There you go. Only D20 game I play is Morkborg. There you go. There you go. Less is more. There you go. We got Tom Tremaine. Hello from London CW. Hello to Tom Tremaine. As you will see, Tom, here you are. There you go. Genocide. I got a couple of RPGs, Firefly, Dresden Files, MHI, and I kind of want the Crow, but I know I ain't playing these, plus VTM, Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf Mage, plus the Hunter 1, 2 from the White Wolf stuff. Hey, look, I got Exalted right here from was it 2000? I got the Player's Guide from 2000, and this is 2004. I gotta believe. So I think that's why I'm working with it. 2004. Yeah, you play anything you want to. Absolutely, you gotta be more specific. And also the crow. That's interesting. I have the main. I don't have it here. It's Everyday Heroes. It's a great book. I like the Everyday Heroes book. From is it Evil Genius? It's not Evil Hat. It's Evil Genius did the Everyday Heroes book. It's a great thick tome. I've never played the system, but I've looked at the book extensively, and I find the book very great. I mean, I loved the D20 Modern book, so I was very excited when I heard about the Everyday Heroes. I have the Highlander supplement for Everyday Heroes, so the Crow I understand is another kind of variation on it. It'd be interesting to see, especially because of the new movie that I've got no faith in coming out with WN2. But I would say is that before you buy the Crow, I would tell you to take a look at the Everyday Heroes book. If you find it somewhere on sale. The company I think was running into some problems. So you might see if you could see that book on the cheap, or see. I think they're another one of those groups of those organizations that might have the quick start rules available on the cheap. Guys, everybody give me a second for a minute. I just want to do one thing. Forgive me. This has been annoying me for about it's time for my 423 shofar. And I see I'm about half an hour late on my responses to the live chat, so I apologize to anyone who thought I was ignoring them. I'm not. On my paranoid check. So we got down the list. Check out to see if they got the any sort of quick start guides for Everyday Heroes to see if you'd be down with the system. If you'd be down with the system, I would say think about. I noticed that a lot of those supplements for it, like the Crow one, get pretty cheap. So check it out. I think here's Sam again. I think it boils down to everyone hating Hasbro and wanting them to release the D&D IP, which doesn't even guarantee it's going to fix it. They're never going to release the IP. Here's the other thing: you can't make anyone happy. That's what I talk about when I talk about the OGL crisis being a non-crisis and being a total op. There was a rumor. Yeah, it was reported. There has been no corroboration by anyone coming forward and saying, we know absolutely 100%, and here's our hard smoking gun evidence that there was real, to the best of my knowledge, real proof that there was actionable intel, that there was a go ahead, pull the trigger order to try and revoke the OGL. And even if they had, there's no reason to believe, I'm telling you, there's no reason to believe that they could have. There's no legal document from any corporate lawyer saying, "Oh yeah, we can." I'm telling you, it would have been a legal quagmire. Did people discuss it? Was ever broached? Did anyone bring it up at a corporate meeting? I'm not saying that that's not the case, but hey, FYI, and in case you're curious, anyone in the U.S. Army will tell you there are plans at the U.S. Army in the military, at every military college, probably everywhere. America has plans to invade Canada, right? Why? Just in case. You never know. Or does that mean that Canada should be pissed off? No, because why wouldn't? Because you that's contingency plans. You think of things. You come up with ideas. And by the way, how many people on the so-called right side of the right wing political side of the culture war are diehard libertarian capitalist corporations should be able to do what they want, go woke, go broke, who all of a sudden, when it came to this OGL crisis, were saying, oh my God, how dare a private company do what they want? I thought the marketplace was supposed to determine what they want, what they should or should not do. But whatever, nothing happened. And here we are in 2024 when the entirety of fifth edition is in the Creative Commons. And again, it's irrelevant to anyone who wants to play DC20 or any other gaming system they want to, because if you want to play a game that's not Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, guess what? What does anyone playing Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition have anything to do with you? Why do you need a D&D killer? What is this desire for a D&D killer? And why must you posit any given product as a D&D killer? Why do you want there to be a D&D killer? Why would you want to see the biggest TTRPG that has ever existed as a financial success to not exist and not to be financially successful? If this was world politics and you were another nation, you would say they want that other nation to not be in existence so they could be the number one nation. But this is not a game of, we're not involved in that. The TTRPG community is a gaming community that exists around a hobby, as gaming systems that are an analog gaming systems competing in a world of digital entertainment that bells and whistles and smoke alarms going off. That is, easier to digest, easier to assimilate, and easier to sell to kids than this stuff. So why would you want the biggest one to go out the window? It's either petty jealousy, childishness. You're not thinking about it. You're just thinking of, I just want to go online and blow off on WotC. Or it's, I started talking about it, but I stopped talking about it. It's you're going to get fired, so you hasten it. You know that the boss is going to fire you. Meanwhile, FY, in case you're curious, if you're in America and you know you're going to get fired, don't quit. If you quit, you might not get your unemployment benefits. If you get fired, you'll get your unemployment benefits. Get fired, don't quit. Little advice. It's not legal advice. Just you're better off getting fired generally. Generally, that's not legal advice. Or people know that the relationship is going south, so what do? Instead of doing the hard work of working on the relationship, they go, fuck it. She's always upset, so fuck it. Man, are you sure you want to go with us, man? Yeah, weren't you telling us that your wife was really pissed off? Man, maybe you should just stick around and hang out with the kids or do what she wants, man. It is her birthday. Man, fuck that shit, man. She's gonna tell me what to do. She's threatening to kick me out of the house. Threatening to kick me out of the house. That's my cat, so you gonna kick me out of the house? Fuck it, I'm gonna leave. But you're gonna leave the house, then since she's gonna divorce you, then you're gonna be kicked out for real, and then you're gonna get divorced, and then I'm gonna just go fuck all the women, man. Man, dude, you're like 58, bro. I don't know if you're thinking this through clearly. I'm not thinking through clearly at all. All I'm thinking about is this weekend, we're all gonna get wasted. And your friend's like, fuck it, man, he's paying. Let's just go get wasted. And you're like, okay, fuck it, let's go. That's the way people are acting. But it doesn't matter because, Watts are going to do whatever they're going to do. And anyone who's saying whatever, people who buy shit on Kickstarter, you want to buy shit Kickstarter, you want to buy another PDF that never gets open, you want to buy another thing on Steam that you're not for, oh my God, it's good. It's the whole game, but it's only $1.99. Download that shit. Send your hard drive and do nothing with it. Buy a PDF that you're going to download and never open. Do whatever you want to. Nothing's going to kill anything. Nothing's going to die. You're just gonna make an ass out of yourself talking about some, whatever. If you found a new game that you want to play and you want to hype it and you want to play it and it's awesome, go for it, play it. You know what I mean? But you don't be needing to tell us that it's gonna be killing anything else. Oh, and by the way, how many ways are we gonna slice this community up into how many subdivisions? You want players to be able to play, right? You get to the playing field. Some people are playing baseball, some people are playing soccer, and some people are playing basketball, right? Some people know how to play this game and are good at this game. Some people are playing this game and are good at this game. Some people are good at this game, playing this game. Some people are good at this game, playing this game. Or if you don't like that, because we're all nerds, you like arcades, okay. They want the arcade games that get the numbers, get the people play that people want to play. And you may get fucked up about it if the game that you like to play and you like to love, eventually they get rid of. Because no one else is playing it but you. But a game like these tabletop role-playing games that you need other people to know about and to get into it, right? To get into it, to make it happen, to go beyond just being able to just survive and just muddle through, to get to the point where it becomes, fluid. You don't want to be changing games every, month, every 6 months. And you don't need to. How many times have you gotten a new update about errata and rules changes to chess? You know what I'm saying? There you go. Got that one. Here we got RPG Exile. This came in at 407. This is a while ago. This is close to 30 minutes ago, so I apologize. It's taking me this long to get to you in the live chat. RPG Exile. MCDM raised $2 million for. Well, they are still deciding what they're going to call it, and that's the other thing. These things are just hype machines. They are all grifters. Hey, I'm gonna tell you something, baby. I come from a world. I got sued out the wazoo. I could buy with my unpaid attorney's fees. By the way, if you look at the description box below, I got a Patreon. I also got a PayPal donation button. I've got, listen, I couldn't buy a decent car with my unpaid attorney's fees. I could buy a shitty car with my unpaid attorney's fees. Go ahead and feel free to join me on Patreon. I don't have tiers. You can join me for as little as $1 a month. I do a weekly live stream over there about everything under the sun. I know about grifters. I used to cover I still do with my other channels. You can see links to my other channels as well, New Age and experimental ufology weirdos as well. I know about grifters. I mean, look, at least the guy is like talking about it. You know what I mean? Like, so at least there's something there. So I don't want to call him a grifter. But it's this. It's like, yeah, it's like people like, you know, just know this. It's like people are getting like excited out the wazoo for things, and just know this is like the reason that, look, if you're into D&D 5th edition, for whatever it's worth, there's the player's handbook, there's the monster manual, there's, you know, the player's guide, the monster manual, the DM guide, whatever. If you're into a lot of these other things, there's a Kickstarter for whatever, but there's whatever comes next. And a lot of this stuff, people have to be honest with themselves. They're just buying things to buy things. What they're really into is consumerism, which is great, which is fine, but also you got to be aware of the fact that you got to read the fine print, and you just got to be aware of that fact that when you're buying, you're purchasing things on Kickstarter, you're it could be vaporwave, it could be vaporware. Here's Mario, Pac-Man, Super Mario, Elite, Dig Dug, etc., came out in the 80s. Games did not peak in the 90s. Okay, there you go. Don't forget, let's turn this to a fight. There you go. There you go. Here's Kalendal. I had this to add texture, not to refute you. Here, let's not forget about recent blockbuster, recent highly rated D&D movie. All I know is this: is that the D&D movie was nothing compared to the true D&D movie. If it doesn't have a Wayne's brother in it, it's not a D&D movie. If it doesn't have Thora Birch in it, it's not the D&D movie. Okay? Critical Role is on a downward slope. Their shows are not live anymore, haven't been for a while, and their fan base is just moving on. Yeah, because look, here's the deal. After 10 years, after a decade, is when people, whether you're into a band, whether you're into an author, whether you're into a particular movie franchise, it's 10 years is when you start to get into Jason Takes Manhattan, right? 10 years is when people start jumping the shark. And it's not because people are garbage. It's just that that's just the way that it goes. It's just the way that it goes, baby. It's just trends. Remember, 10 years after the hype and the Dungeons and Dragons, Dungeons and Dragons, Dungeons and Dragons, and that's the pros and the cons. The satanic panic is an aspect of the success and the cultural impact of Dungeons and Dragons. Elvis the Pelvis, and we can only shoot him from the waist up. The controversy, we're bigger than Elvis, man. We're going to burn the Beatles records. That's part of the manifestation of the impact that they have. But everything has impact, and then everything has diminishing returns, right? Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe collectibles used to be like gold. Elvis Presley reference points were all over movies in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Every cartoon would have some sort of like Elvis like thing in it, right? Elvis Pigeon, right? Johnny Bravo, right? You know, an Elvis like thing. My kids, me and my ex-wife discovered early on that my kids have no conception, right? We've gotten to that point in human culture and in American modern culture. My kids have no reference point for Elvis Presley. And I forget how it happened. I think we were watching, it was either an Animaniacs or was some sort of other, WB cartoon where some obvious Elvis Presley reference point came out, or it might have been Lilo and Stitch where he came out and was doing the Elvis thing, and my kids were like, well, they understood it as, Stitch dressing up or being like a rock and roll guy. And I was like, no, he's being Elvis. And they were like, whereas I don't remember when no one had to tell me who Elvis was or who Marilyn Monroe was or who Lucille Ball was, right? It was just always in the cultural milieu. It was always in the house. I grew up. I Love Lucy, even though it was a rerun from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was in the house. When was the last time you heard an Elvis Presley song on the radio? If you hear what we would consider or what we would call oldies radio on terrestrial radio, if you ever have the opportunity, because your iPod kicks out, or your satellite radio signal kicks out, or your MP3 player, your phone kicks out in your car, and you're cursed with having to listen to terrestrial radio, what is now considered oldies music, and I'm not considering classical music, which is truly oldies music, but if you get to what you would consider oldies music today, they're playing 80s music, which makes sense because it's from 40 years ago. Whereas when I was growing up in the 80s, 40 years ago was the 1940s. So, of course, they would play something from the 50s or the 60s that would include Elvis Presley. But we don't realize how long we've been around. And people don't realize and want to treat everything like it's perennially contemporary because we're in denial about our own mortality, and we're in denial about things moving on, and you know, and it's in our society, and it's this thing we talk about whether we were aware of it or not. Some things may be aware or operating with it, and that's subconsciously. So there'd be some people that might be caught by surprise, or maybe this is me, an aspect of me letting you know that not all of us will be caught by surprise. Like Cassandra, some people will listen to me, most people will not. I'm telling you, we're dying. Ben over at Questing Beasts and RPG Pundit wants to say that the OSR is bigger than it's ever been. Well, okay, the OSR is bigger than it's ever been, according to you. And then RPG Pundit says he's had his best year ever in TTRPGs. Okay, what are the numbers? What are you telling us? You made $100, $1,000. I'm not trying to get. I don't think he necessarily should give us numbers, but what does that mean? Because if you did your best numbers in TTRPG space, RPG Pundit, because you're the Baptism of Fire's been on number one on Drive Through RPG, and you made a couple of $100, that indicates that, look, this is like, come on. Like I just, I don't know if it was the last video I made on this channel, another video I made on one of my other channels. I was telling stories about my boy talking about 95. It was 95, it was 96 or 97. I had a friend who worked at Tower Records in the city, and the lead singer of Brutal Truth, Kevin Sharp, worked at Tower Records with him, right? Signed to Relapse Records, biggest, arguably at the time, the biggest grindcore band in the world, Brutal Truth, right? Played on Headbangers Ball, absolutely. Went to Donington, played the big stage, went on when he was on tour. When he was not on tour, was working at Tower Records. And I'm not saying that to say he was a loser, he was working at Tower Records. I'm saying to you, like, dude, you know what I mean? Like teach like RPG Pundit, God bless him. It's like I'm the final boss of Internet Shitlords. Whatever, taking that true, if you're the final boss of Internet Shitlords, but you are, what I mean? Like, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not shitting on anybody. Like the measure of a man is not financial success, but if the measure of financial success of the guy that's, you know, the number one seller on Drive Through RPG means that you've got milk money, then people should know that, you know what I mean, that the financial state of the OSR that's growing bigger than it's ever been is still milk money. And milk money and the willingness to compromise your body will get you so far in the big city. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that to be cold. I'm saying that to be just like straight up. Here we go, Mario. Another fallacious statement: video games are not in a bad state right now just because the few mainstream game companies are struggling. Mario's. Listen, Kilendall, for what it's worth, I backed Kilendall on that Kilendall statement. Mario coming hard. Mario coming hard. It is what it is. Here we go. Pay to play is always trouble. Well, look, here's Mario. So many good games are out just because the GAAS games. I don't even know what that means, or fuck it doesn't mean that the whole industry is bad. What was that's the same thing. Underground underground music and culture and gaming can be thriving, but if it's existing at a level where it can be taken out, it is what it is. I don't know. I don't. The video games is just everyone chill. It's what it is. You're saving it. Believe it or not, Scott blocked me because he thinks AI is sentient, and I basically asked him for proof of a thinking machine. He blocked me after telling me I was a hateful person. Well, look, it's funny because the AI discussion happened. I don't want to get too far afield, but it's interesting because the AI discussion kicked off. I innocently thought that there was a synchronistic moment where both I, Scott, and Grim Jim all had made videos basically pro AI art in our own distinct way, independently of each other. And I made a video that commented upon that and also did William S. Burroughs cut ups about it, thinking that I had unlocked the magical door that would create a nexus of connection between me, Scott Garrity, and a person that I thought I was destined to be friends with, Grim Jim. The very next day, it kicked off another fallacious non-story debacle regarding that pseudo story about the expose of liberal, terrible people in the gaming industry with that fake article by the psychologist that disappeared and died, I think. And then it turned out that turned me and Grim Jim into bitter enemies. And it gave Scott Garrity an opportunity as a Christian to make a statement that I believe was passive aggressively making fun of me for having a shopping addiction. Or that's how I took it, but he may have meant it in another way. And meanwhile, for a person that thought that AI was sentient, Scott Garrity made those several videos and then went on and just started talking about something else. Here's Genocide. My kids got me the Rick and Morty D&D book. The Rick and Morty D&D book is fire. And the Rick and Morty, did you get just the Rick and Morty D&D book, or did you also get the box set to play Rick and Morty D&D? Because the Rick and Morty D&D box set is fucking fire. The Rick and Morty D&D box set is fucking fire. That is the way to play 5th edition D&D. That is the way to learn 5th edition D&D. It is awesome. It is one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best introductions to role playing in general. I might do a thing on it. Here's Alex. That's a Kiss shirt. Fucking A, man. I don't see a lot of love for that band nowadays. Didn't know so many people turn their nose up at glam rock. Lol. Yeah, actually, and I do need this. This was pointed out to me. This is a Kiss T-shirt, but I need to. I was educated by the number one. I'm gonna wait. I shouldn't say that. A number one Kiss fan on YouTube, an individual who is my favorite YouTube content creator, an individual by the name of Reamce, Reamce. Subscribe to Reamce. They are brilliant. They are my favorite YouTube content creator of all time. They made a video about my religion. I have my own religion, Commonwealth Chanting. If you send an email to c.w.chanter@gmail.com, I'll send you an 11-page PDF explaining to it. Or you can watch Reamce's video explaining Commonwealth Chanting. True. He pointed out something that I didn't know about this T-shirt, even though I've been wearing it for years. This, people famously need to know. This is, where am I? Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, correct? This is not actually Ace Frehley. This is Tommy Thayer in Ace Frehley's makeup. And this is not Peter Criss. This is, and it's not Eric Carr. This is the replacement drummer, the other guy. Tom Tremaine. Here we go. It sounds like people are really mad at Hasbro, but I never thought about it like that. It does seem like a juvenile reaction to the OGL scandal, but people seem really hype about these newer projects. It's one thing they get hype, but it's one thing. See, here's the thing. I have no problem with people being hyped about something. I do have a problem with people being pumped and dumped, right? I have no problem with people being hype about or excited about something, but you don't want to see people being manipulated or used. And so part of my messaging is like, just pay attention to what's happening. The same people that are telling you to get jazzed up because DC20 is supposedly going to be the next D&D killer are the same people that told you that Shadow Dark was going to be the next D&D killer, are the same people that told you that Black Flag of the Valiant, whatever, was going to be the next D&D killer, with the same people that told you that Daggerheart was going to be a D&D killer. And it's all the same story. D&D became D&D organically, right? There are some things, aspects of the story that may seem inorganic. Company A buys Company B. A corporate decision is made at the company that owns the brand Dungeons and Dragons that you disagree with. Someone is placed in charge of the IP that you don't think, or the community doesn't think, is sensitive to the needs of the tabletop role-playing game community, or you don't think is part of the tabletop role-playing game community. You may disagree or not like the way the river turns or flows, but it doesn't change the fact of what happens. You might not like the results of a given U.S. election. You might not like that it may be the case that in a given political milieu or a given point in human history, an election in a hypothetical country is manipulated or stolen. You might not like the usurpation or the disruption of a democratic system. But if that actually comes to happen or transpires, then that is what has happened or has transpired, right? And if the history books are recorded accurately, then they will record that event. So there are predictions about the future that can be made objectively. And then there are attempts that can be made to make the future happen that are just hype and just bullshit. And at a certain point when we know it's just hype and bullshit because it's never happened, and it's, never say never under certain conditions. But when we know that the facts on the ground just do not exist to have anything materialize to what people are predicting, then we can know and understand that they're just BSing. And when we can know and understand that the facts on the ground are so divergent from the reality that people are predicting, that no one who's informed, whether the community or the people saying these things, could think that this is possibly the case, then we can say that either, unless we can think that people have put LSD in the collective water, then if people are talking this way, it's like this thing that I'm talking about, this death drive. People are out of their minds. So why are people that should be acting perfectly sane, that is, discussing tabletop role playing games, tabletop role playing games, discussing games on their merits, about their games, and just talking about these games like they're a hobby, and like, what? Why are people talking about these things all crazy? There's some sort of sickness involved. There's some sort of mental sickness that is taking place. It has become about something else, and it's why you see this thing, like the people getting involved. They're bizarro, like, political manifestos involved. It's like, what, you know what I mean? Like, in what way, shape, or form would, people are seeing shapes in the clouds? And people are being, completely hypocritical about things, and people saying things like, like, this is dastardly when Dungeons and Dragons are changing, you know, uh, race to species, and yet other companies are doing the exact same thing, and these other companies are not being referenced or talked about at all. You can see it's just, people are just being, the emperor has no clothes. People are acting like complete, like they've got a screw loose. And it's one thing when people act like they've got a screw loose when they've just been told they've got a horrible diagnosis. When someone has just can't come back from receiving a they've this happens. People do go to the doctor and come back. You know, it's surreal. It's never happened to me, but I've heard about it. The doctor tells you that you might have 6 to 9 months to live, and then you leave the doctor's office and you drive yourself home. You've just been told that you have 6 to 9 months to live, and you drive yourself home from the doctor's office. Through rush hour traffic. You stop at the stop sign. Kids cross the street. You slow down at the yellow. You go on the green. You arrive at your apartment. You go in the door. You've been told that you have 6 to 9 months to live. And it's Tuesday. And then the phone rings. It's your mother, wants to know how it went. Oh, and by the way, you've got work tomorrow. If that person acts and reacts the following day at work as if they are on Pluto, processing information strange, reacting weird, seems like they're somewhere else, we can understand. But when people make a total leave from their senses, and have been making a total leave from their senses for going on months now, in regards to and inevitable. I mean, folks, what, people are acting as though tabletop role playing games have this, like, extended shelf life in the face of video games, video game technology, or like that WotC is not going all digital, or that somehow the future is not happening. And that's not me saying that these games won't continue to exist, but they're going to continue to exist in a you know what I mean, in a different way. And maybe this is like I said, I posit this is maybe a manifestation of it, like that people are acting like, let's kill WotC, because like let's kill them before they just leave us. Because you'll see when WotC leave, when they go all digital, you know what I mean, to AI desktops or whatever, AI GMs, if everyone's going to think that there's going to be anything, it's going to be a completely bizarre world for TTRPGs. If the thing Dungeons and Dragons that used to bring new players into the world, am I saying that no one ever started with another RPG other than Dungeons and Dragons? I'm not saying that at all. But for the majority of life on planet Earth, for the TTRPG community, the gateway was always Dungeons and Dragons, right? Are there people that their first high was methamphetamine, glass, or H? Yeah, I guess there are people out there, but for the most part, you know what I mean. In a world without boons and skunk weed, it's gonna be a strange world for people who party, right? You know what I mean? I'm just saying. So you don't want D&D to die, unless as a TTRPG community, you have some sort of end of life suicidal impulse. But it's not a big deal because this is games anyway, right? There's Calendal. It's a problem of serving all the different preferences of every possible player type. Possibly. That's why they're constantly chasing the next it thing. They're seeking some kind of communal consolidation. I think there might be aspects of that. Over time, people take issues with various aspects, luck based elements, lack of perfect authority. A game for everyone is a game for no one. What about a game called Life? I always end up in the poorhouse. Da 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 da. Work later. That's what I say. We say hello to 16 Psych. Best viewers on something. My kids have no reference point for Elvis. It's like an ingredient that has been mixed into dough. It permeates culture in other ways. Totally possible. This stream is just making me feel old and sad. Human condition be damned. Well, we don't want that. Alex, I remember when kids referred to Shaquille O'Neal as the guy from the Crying Man meme. I don't even know what that meme is. When I first saw that, your reference, I thought he wasn't in the Crying Game. That was Forrest Whitaker. Games as a service. Thank you. Talking about GASS. GAAS and what that means. We have Neurolancer. Hey, I disagree. Well, Neurolancer, I appreciate you coming to the live chat and disagreeing. Here we go. Gotta bounce. Looking forward to upcoming content. There you go. I can read the tea leaves. We got 23 people. I've been here for an hour and 50 minutes. That's enough for me. That's enough for you. We've wrapped it up. We've said enough. DC20. Is it the D&D killer? Of course not. But everyone, people have said it before. I'm not saying anything new. Why does anything need to be a D? Why do you need something to be a D&D killer? Why is that even part of the agenda? Why even discuss that? Huh? That's the question. Why make that part of the question? It's because here's Neurolancer. If you actually noticed, neither Dungeon Coach or Matt Colville ever said their games are D&D killers. It's other YouTubers who are doing it for clickbait. Fair enough. Fair enough. And like I said, Neurolancer, if you watched my video from the start, I don't know if I said that Dungeon Coach or Matt Colville called their games D&D killers. I think I did a fair job of talking about what people were talking about calling them D&D killers. A common quiz question used to be, what's Elvis's middle name? The answer is Aaron, of course, Elvis Aaron Presley. And of course, he had a twin brother who didn't he have a twin brother who died during childbirth, who was Aaron Elvis Presley. I think that was the case. He was working on a musical at the end of his life. All right, musical version of Somebody Up There Likes Me. But wasn't Neurolancer. Anyway, listen, I am not here trying to throw shade on anybody, not even the people who talk about things being a D&D killer. I'm just trying to have a conversation or point out silly things that people do, and talk about why they might be doing them. And of course, I might be doing silly things as well. And the silliest thing might be doing them for close to 2 hours. Talk about burying the lead. There's a lead. Listen, folks. Oh my God. Always be heartbreak for me. 3 of Swords from the Egyptian Tarot. 3 of Swords. The only thing missing is a dagger heart. 3 is normally a blessed number in the tarot, but when we get to the 3 of Swords, it is always tends to be certain cards just have a common understanding, a common reputation, and a kind of a known quantity and quality. And the 3 of Swords is just always associated with heartache, heartbreak, and a little bit of difficulty. But things are what they are, and things are what you make of them. Heartbreak and heartache are conditions. All conditions are temporary, and all conditions can be opportunities for growth, knowledge, gnosis, and learning. So, for example, here we talk about the search for the D&D killer as a manifestation of TTRPG World's death drive. We're using our intelligence to talk about and think about something that might be irksome, death, and people's desire to talk about things in a negative light. They could talk about this new gaming system, just about this gaming system, but what they're talking about it being and making it about going against a thing, going against WotC. Well, we can talk about people being chagrined, why people are being chagrined, why people are being upset, and you'll notice there was a lot of that in this video. The scalpel can cut, but the scalpel can cure. The surgeon's incision may sting, but it may be the necessary thing to do to alleviate the underlying symptom that's causing the discomfort, or may be leading to some further, more difficult problem. Also, if there's some inevitability of death or change or transition that needs to be encountered that people might not want to deal with, that doesn't mean that it's not something that has to be dealt with. So we deal with it. That's what I got on a Friday. Folks, always looking to play. So if people have opportunities to play, know of tables that are open or places that I could lay my hat or have some fun, please reach out to me. The email is c.w.chanter@gmail.com. I've got my own system I'm kind of working on. Over Father's Day, my kids have reluctantly agreed again to play with me. Not going to happen. Promises, promises. But we hope for the best. I'm currently working on having fun going through the Exalted game book. I've got a homebrew system, very easy peasy, based on I've talked about it before, based on my meta RPG, TTT, SSP, meta RPG, BS. Thing, but at 2 hours in, we don't want to open up a whole new thing. That'll be crazy. Anyway, but I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. If nobody told you they loved you today, somebody just did. That's somebody's CW chanter. Don't y'all forget about it. Okay. So until next time, make sure to take a look at the description box below. Like, comment, and subscribe. That is a call to action and an order. Do it. Do it. Do it now. Subscribe, like, comment. Do what I tell you to do. Mwah. And if you see all those other channels, like and comment and subscribe to those things as well. Okay? Feel free to join my Patreon as well. Okay? Be good. Have a nice trip. See you next fall. That's what she said. Okay. Peace. Stephen Glicker has a posse.